Late Night Health continues with Jim LaValle. Jim is a clinical pharmacist, board-certified clinical nutritionist, and author of Your Blood Never Lies. Jim has been on the show numerous times, and we welcome him back. Hey, Jim, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. We're going to talk about conquering the Superwoman syndrome, and I think that might be even appropriate as we head into summer months, because women who are working, for example, or moms, have more to do during the summer because the kids are around more. Would that be accurate in your opinion?
Oh, I think without a doubt that adds an extra level of stress. I just know from, when we were raising kids, and I still have, a almost 17-year-old at home. Summer hits, man, you get another layer of worry on, okay, what am I going to do? What are they going to do? Where are they going? How are they doing it? And you got 8 hours to fill up in the day versus school. So there's no doubt that adds to the mix when you come into these summer months.
Is stress one of the big things that causes problems for both men and women?
Well, I think stress is big for men and women. There's no doubt when you look at all the data on the effects of stress. Even the Wall Street Journal reported that, stress causes, changes in cholesterol and elevations in lipids. But the bottom line is that stress, when women get extra stress put on them, their nervous system behaves differently than men. That stress actually ends up triggering more fight or flight response in women, and they release more stress hormones like cortisol and then more adrenaline. And the problem with that is that translates into feeling overcommitted, more anxious, more nervous. And that kind of actually makes sense because, more women end up being prescribed, way more women end up being prescribed for anti-anxiety drugs, antidepressants. And the effect of chronic stress is exactly that. It starts to, mess up the circuit board, basically, of your brain, and you start to take on inappropriate fight or flight response.
That fight or flight response, that would be like me going into the woods, coming across a bear, or a bug. Yeah, we're going to be talking about bugs later on. You're right. A little spider crawls up my leg, I'm gone. But so I see a bear. I actually see, in my case, I have 3 responses. One, I can faint, which is probably what I would do. The other is I turn and run and try to get away from the bear. And 3, I would turn and try to fight the bear. Is that what a fight or flight reaction is? Yeah. The fight or flight response is basically built in to help us get over heroic events, right? Being attacked, something traumatic. The problem is that when we get repeatedly insulted with, I don't have enough time, I have to get this project done, this is going on with my kids, my email just went down, my God, I'm behind on my Facebook postings, right? I mean, all these things start to create a nervous system, a primitive nervous system that has to survive in a modern world. And everybody has a different tolerance for how much they can take on. But for women, they tend to hit the panic button on their nervous system quicker, and that relates to stress eating, more desires for comfort food, weight gain, problems with sleep, and then, of course, things like problems with mood. But the big thing is that, it's like, man, that bag of potato chips or those tortilla chips are my best friend, or so's that cookie. I want to rub that cookie on my head. I don't want to just eat it. I don't know about you. I just want to stuff them into my mouth.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you talk to people who really stress eat, they'll say, I ate the first couple of cookies. It tasted great. I ate the third cookie. It didn't taste so good, but I still reached for it. Then I got to the 5th cookie. I definitely didn't want it anymore, but my brain told me, just eat one more. And in fact, because it was telling you, if you could just eat that, you're going to calm down. And that's called the reward cascade. And really what I try to give people is, in a modern world, people, I think, in general, eat too much starch anyway. But when you eat a fair amount of starch, and that starch gets into your bloodstream and causes your blood sugar to go up, that triggers, a lot of things. Triggers inflammation, triggers more insulin to be released, and when that insulin's released, you're going to trigger more adrenaline. And so it's important to manage, if you're going to be in this kind of higher carb world, how do you manage it? And I think for women, learning that, okay, I've tried doing ultra-low carb diets, they don't work, I always rebound, I gain more weight. We got to teach them, at least for us in our practice, when I get out and I'm lecturing, how do you begin to manage the fact that you're going to go to a pizza party for your kid, that you're going to go to a baseball game and all they've got are nachos and hot dogs? How do you manage
Not
that?
at Dodger Stadium anymore, and I think they have sushi in Anaheim Stadium.
I know.
Which, by the way, doesn't.
Right.
But right. But it just doesn't. To me, it doesn't go with a watching a baseball game. It is that hot dog.
No, it doesn't. I know. I agree with you completely.
What about eating? What about eating these things once in a while? Is that okay?
Yeah, it is. It is okay. I mean, I think it depends where you're at. I mean, if you're struggling with your weight, you got to figure out how to get the carbs down. I like Phase 2 carb controller. It's a couple different brands on the market, 3 or 4 that use that ingredient. The reason I like that is that it blocks the absorption of some of the starch, so that 2/3 of the starch doesn't get into your bloodstream. And so you don't get a spike in your blood sugar. And they showed in human studies when people ate equal diets and they took a starch blocker, Phase 2 in particular, that people lost weight. And even after they got off of the Phase 2, they actually maintained their weight loss for 6 months. 73% of the people in the study maintained their weight loss. And I think that's important because, people really are struggling with weight. 78% of the population is overweight, 50% insulin resistant or diabetic. We got to stop thinking that people are going to eat 12 servings of vegetables and fruit a day. I've thought about it forever, and I've realized I have to teach people how to manage their starch intake, because for the most part, even when people exercise, they exercise for, an hour out of the day. The other 23 hours, the only exercise they get is using their mouse or their keyboard.
Well,
here at
Late Night Health, the mouth is the most exercise thing that we do with Daryl and myself, and then the second would be a keyboard. You're right. You're actually right. As we have this very stressful life in the 21st century, and we're talking about the conquering the Superwoman syndrome. There's always something happening. Kids spill something on the carpet and it's red paint. All these different things that happen to add stress. Does this affect the body, and how? Because there's always that fight or flight condition that keeps triggering more from the adrenal glands.
Well, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, look, here's what we know: when cortisol levels go up, and so chronic stress causes the stress hormone cortisol to start to begin released more regularly, and they've directly shown that as serum cortisol levels go up, you become less insulin active, meaning your insulin doesn't work as well. And when you become insulin resistant, you start to store fat. The next thing is your blood pressure goes up. So we know that blood pressure goes up as you're under more stress. The third thing is you actually begin to lose bone mineral density, and people don't realize that cortisol causes your bone to actually start to, for lack of a better term, melt down, because you mobilize those minerals to manage your stress response.
So your bones become more brittle?
Your bones do become more brittle. So you become more osteopenic. You lose muscle, which is a big term right now everybody's talking about, is sarcopenia. And then the other thing is that your growth hormone levels go down as your serum cortisol goes up. Your thyroid hormones get less active, so your metabolism slows down. And last but not least, as your cortisol levels go up, your body starts to reduce the amount of sex hormones that you're making. So for women, they make less estradiol. For men, they make less testosterone. And then that creates a whole cascade of issues. So at the middle of this issue of stress, it's important for people to understand it's not something that's just kind of out there in the ethers, that the stress response in your body creates a chain reaction that accelerates the aging process.
Whoa. So I could die, women can die earlier.
Well, I mean, let's face it. Women obviously they end up with a protective mechanism called estradiol for heart disease. But when women cross menopause, more women die of heart disease than men.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was even. Wow.
Yeah, no, more women die of heart disease than men. Once they reach menopause. And it's important to understand that, that data is skewed a little bit because women live longer than men, and therefore, more women loaded at that age, in that age group. But the result is still that with stress comes an increased risk. As your heart rate's going up and your heart's beating faster, that's associated with increased risk of, cardiovascular mortality. And that's why it's important for people to understand that when you're stressed out, your chemistry starts to shift. You're going to tolerate carbs less. And so you gain 5, 10, 15 pounds over the course of a year or two. That's the interesting thing about, using things like phase 2. And then, of course, vitamin D is really important. A lot of people don't realize, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that I look at their labs and they just don't have enough vitamin D.
But you and I have talked about that in the past. There's an epidemic of low vitamin D in this country.
Oh, it truly is epidemic. And I'm on the Organic and Natural Health Association and Scientific Advisory Board. It's a not-for-profit that's studying vitamin D status. 12,000 people are being tracked internationally right now. And a lot of people don't realize they can get their own vitamin D levels checked in their own home if they want. I mean, they don't have to go to their doc if they don't want to, but their doctors should be measuring their vitamin D.
Right. And with vitamin D, what kind of level should somebody take? Or does it vary?
It depends. Yeah, it depends how low they are. But obviously, everybody can safely take 5,000 units of vitamin D 5 days a week. Get your vitamin D levels measured. If the vitamin D is not going up when you take vitamin D, you may need to take some vitamin A with it, since vitamin D works on what's called a retinoic acid receptor, which is what vitamin A is made. It's retinoic acid.
We're going to take a time out, and we're going to have you finish this in just a couple of moments. Our guest, the author of Your Blood Never Lies, Jim LaValle, and he is a registered pharmacist and nutritionist. And Jim and I will be back as Late Night Health continues. Please join us at latenighthealth.com. Lots of information over there. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Late Night Health with Mark Allen. The show continues in a moment.